am so happy to welcome Jenny and Mark here today from Boldly Original. And here's what I need to tell everyone. I gave you a little bit of an intro about them, but what you also need to know about them is they are the most fun people to be around because they are so fabulously curious about the person across from them. And it feels so good just to be in this position today instead of having to be the host. So I want to everyone to just know that I have a painful smile on my face. It's so big. And so Jenny and Mark, so people can get a little bit of a sense of what you do. Will you share with the audience kind of, say hello and share a little bit about what it is you do that's so magical?
Oh, well,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
for that
you.
introduction.
Well, it's great to be here with you, and hi, everyone.
Hi. Yeah, so we're meaning and purpose coaches, and we help people uncover their deepest inner meaning that they want to express in the world so they can do what matters most. And we find that we're really taught to go about finding meaning and purpose in some ways that maybe aren't the best, because sometimes we tend to start with a question, what can I do that'll give me purpose? Looking on the outside, what can I do? And the thing is, even if it's something you really enjoy doing, we find that that can't necessarily give you meaning in a sustained way. And that really meaning comes from the inside. It's an inner meaning that you bring to your life and your work. And many of us haven't like fully discovered and articulated what that inner meaning is.
hmm Yeah, exactly. So, real meaning comes from generally the things that you've gone through and grown through in your life, and that you wouldn't
Guys, I'm
necessarily.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. I have to stop us for a second. I'm so sorry. Our sound levels are insanely different right now, and I just heard
Oh,
Oh,
it. So Jenny's is not as loud, and Mark's is really, really loud, and I don't think my editor will ever be able to fix that. And so I
oh,
just want to
is
see, and
it
I don't know
something not?
if it's the closeness of the microphone or if it's
that's
the
That's
weird.
level
weird.
we're talking at. It just comes through. I was like moving up and down, and I just don't want that to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
No.
comes through
Huh,
crappy.
Can we test it again?
we've
Is it,
never heard that before, so I don't know
how
what's
do we
going on.
test it?
You know
Yeah,
what,
is there a
Mark?
way to?
Can you just move? I think you might just be a louder talker, which is fabulous. Can you move? Could your mic adjust at all? Does it swing out a little bit? Is there a way to do that or
My
no?
mic?
Or
No.
Sure.
maybe mine should be closer
Oh,
to.
that made the biggest difference in the
Oh,
world.
it did? Okay, mine
Yeah.
wasn't close enough to my
Okay,
mouth.
so
Okay.
how are we now? Is my
Mark,
mic
Is
in a
it
good?
move yours up a little bit, Mark.
Okay, how's that?
You talk, Jenny.
okay? How's this?
Perfect. It made the
Okay,
hugest
Okay,
good.
difference in the
Oh,
world.
good.
I
that's
notice it
so.
in our mastermind sometimes, and I'm like, I think Jenny's just kind of a quiet talker. But
I always thought she had a louder voice than me. So okay,
I'm
thank you.
so sorry because it was so good, but I don't want this to be something where someone has to go like this the
Oh,
whole time. I don't
absolutely,
think the
yeah.
editor would be able to do
No, no, I'm glad you pointed it
that.
out.
Okay,
But
Thank
we're
you.
good now.
totally good.
Volume's good.
Let's do a. That was our rehearsal.
Okay,
Okay,
All
awesome.
right.
I think we're gonna nail it. Okay,
I
good.
think we're too. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to ever do better at that intro again, so we might just use the first intro, but here we go. All right. Hey, people. I am so glad that you're here to listen today because I have two incredible guests with me. Jenny and Mark are here from Boldly Original, and I'm just gonna give you what's going on for me right now, and then I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. And what's going on for me right now is I have a painful smile on my face because being around Jenny and Mark just feels so good. They are, I don't know, are you criminally curious about people? Is that maybe the way to describe it? Like
That's good.
so interested in helping people understand their purpose and give them meaning in their lives. And I just would love to have you guys explain a little bit more about that because I'm not going to have the right language for this. Will you help people understand exactly what it is you do?
Sure. Oh,
Mm,
thank you for that
Thank you,
introduction, Brian.
Brian. So great to be here.
Yes. Yeah. So we're meaning and purpose coaches, and we help people uncover the deepest inner meaning they want to express in the world so they can do what matters most. And we believe that we've been taught to go about finding meaning and purpose in the wrong way by starting with the question, what can I do that will bring me purpose? So much emphasis on the outside and what you can do. And the thing is, even if you're doing something that you really love, we find that that can't really bring you meaning in a sustained way because true meaning is from the inside. It's an inner meaning that we bring to our life and our work. And a lot of us haven't like fully discovered and articulated what that is.
Yeah, exactly. So real meaning generally comes from all the things we've gone through and grown through in our life. And the stuff we wouldn't necessarily want to go through again, but it's made us who we are now.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's also stuff we would love to go through again. It can be both. Um, but when you look at that exactly the right way, you explore it the right way, you find that your life has perfectly prepared you to help teach, heal, or express something in the world. And it's something you already feel really passionate about, even though you may not have articulated it before. So we help people find that thing and articulate it. And our term for that thing is your boldly original proposition, or BOP. We call it your BOP. And when you find it and articulate it, it's like, whoa, things make sense now. And it gives you so much clarity.
I love the way you're saying this. So, and I know these listeners are listening because they're so, this is a creative audience here. And what I'm connecting to is two things. First, I love that it's called BOP because it gives something which can feel dense, a lightness to it. Like, we're going to find your BOP because it should, once it's there, feel like something that feels great to say and express. But like, tell me your why feels like a very aggressive sentence, right? Which is not how you're approaching this at all.
I've been in that room too.
Right. And then the other thing that you said is articulating it. And I think so many of us, we think in thought, we think in words, at least that's the way I imagine the way that I'm thinking, is I'm thinking in words. And our ability to have the language for what we feel is such, we sometimes become like third graders. I've got 4 glossary words that I know how to say about the way I feel, right? And so that I feel like you are you uncover that, the words that have meaning for us, and the word that might have meaning for me has a different meaning for you. And that is just so a powerful piece of what you do. And to be clear, it's not just about like, let's find the copy for your website. That's not at all what we're talking about. We're actually talking something so much more meaningful. It might help you write that, sure. But we're talking about like the bigger thing. So I have put myself in the hot seat today, everyone. And I'm going to bring a sensitive subject to Jenny and Mark to help me find a BOP or find language. We're going to see what this journey looks like. I'm giving them the full baton here. Breaking character, they're going to be the hosts for a while, to talk about something that is coming up for me that I want to work on, that I would like to have better language for. So I feel myself now already ad-libbing and vamping because I'm afraid to hand you the microphone right now. So I'm just going to ungracefully hand you the microphone and say, here, I'm now seated inside of your office, and do what you would do with me.
Well, thank you. Fortunately, we have our own microphones, and you do too, so we're all good. So, okay, so we talked a little bit before, and I just wanted to say one thing I noticed recently. We were on another meeting. We were in a group, right? And I looked over and saw your name just as it is now with Reverend in front of it. And that's super cool.
Thank you.
And I know you've talked a little bit about that's an area where you feel like you could maybe get a little clearer or more comfortable. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, tell us a little bit about, you becoming a reverend and what's going on with that.
Sure. So I was in a 2-year program that took me 3 years to complete. And I am now legally recognized by the state of California by a reverend. And it isn't I can marry your cousin now. It's actually a 2-year program. We had lessons every single day. So yeah, I can marry your cousin, but I can also decide to open a church or something, right? And the word reverend, I don't know about the word reverend. Let me tell you about what it. So for me, the study that I went through is A Course in Miracles, and A Course in Miracles is there's no dogma, there's no doctrine, it's not a religion, it's a psychological mind training. That sounds really like you're joining a cult when they say it that way. So that also is language that I don't love, right? It's a mindset shifting program, isn't even the right word, or way of thinking philosophy that is based on love instead of a mindset based on fear. And it uses in its way of conveying this message traditional Christian stories and analogies, and it uses the word Christ and Jesus and all those things. And in my experience, I am much more of a universe person. I toss the word God around too. God means something for me, but even saying that right now feels uncomfortable, because the last thing I want is the person who is a different religion or different understanding to not be able to understand what I'm saying, or have a wall against being able, because I used the wrong word, right? And this is not political correctness, or this is not really caring about diversity, or that's not what this is. This is something around wanting to not say language that's going to slow someone down from understanding what I'm talking about. Because I do believe that all religions have truth to them, that there are basic truths to all religions, and that we are, and so I don't believe one's better than another. I only believe this. This is where I wrestle. I'm wrestling with it now as I'm trying to say it. You can see me like, this is so uncomfortable. I can't believe I'm putting this on my own podcast right now. Like, how am I even, I'm sweating now. So
well,
did I answer the question at all?
That was great.
Okay.
That was great. I want to ask you, so putting aside for a moment the language, trying to, if you weren't to worry about the language you use, even right now to answer this question, what do you feel like this training that you've just received, this study that you've done, how does that give you a new way or another way to serve the people that you work with?
This is a weirdly meta answer, I'll just tell you,
Mm-hmm.
because it gives me language to be able to explain spiritual concepts. It also like, so whether or not you are Christian, for example, let's use that for an example, right? You probably know the story that there's a cross, Jesus was on a cross, there was a crucifixion, supposedly he was resurrected, right? So that story gives me an easier way in to create a context for something I might be teaching, right? Or the same way that a fairy tale or the Wizard of Oz does. I use those analogies too, right? So that's another tool that I have to do that. And it comes back to what we said earlier, which is we're third graders when it talks about our experience. And somehow I find by having this spiritual language, I can help someone feel more safe in themselves to find belonging, to speak what's going on for them by creating that kind of spiritual safety, I think. And then the last piece that I will say about it is it also, it creates a kind of, if I can imagine like people being together and this is the way we're talking, it creates a kind of like, oh, we are doing this not for selfish reasons. We are doing whatever it is we're doing, whether that is, like you said, your bop, or it is what, we are in this together for more than ourselves. And it kind of, and I do this like whipping gesture with my hands. It kind of whips you into like, I am more than just my own desires and outcomes. I am so much more than that. And so I think having that facility with that language helps to remind people of that. And so then they're either better citizens in the classroom or they're better citizens in the world, right? Because they know that their impact is bigger than just, I'm like, talk to my actors, like, I'm just getting new headshots. Well, actually you're getting new headshots because that's part of you stepping into, like, it gives me the ability to connect the dots for my students and my clients better.
Mm-hmm. I can really see you lighting up when you say I'm more than my desires and outcomes, and it helps us become better citizens. Like you lit up when you said that. Is that something that has like always felt really important to you? Was there a time when you lost touch with that? Like, say more about that.
I don't think I understood it. This is so geeky, but here's what I'll say. I started studying A Course in Miracles. I started the spiritual practice. And then I was like, okay, can I try to say this when I'm coaching people? Like, can I bring this into the room? And then when I would bring it in the room and see how much it affected people when I actually was connected to some piece of their spirituality, their purpose, how much it changed them. And that gave me more permission to believe into this. But it wasn't until I saw it in someone else, Jenny, that I actually understood it. Right? I get excited about it now, but it was because I could see what it did for someone else. It wasn't necessary. I understood myself when I saw what it did for someone else. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the themes here that you're talking about is, like Jenny said, you said, I am more than my desires or my outcomes. It's being something more than just this human form, this ego that we see ourselves as, right? What was your, like, has that been a running theme in your life, or was there a time when you kind of first realized, oh, I'm more than this persona I've been thinking I am?
I hate you. Go off my podcast. No one asked you to ask questions like this.
We can stop. We need a safe word. Yeah.
So here we go. So we didn't make a safe word. Damn it. Okay. So I will
let us know if we go too far.
I grew up in a single parent household, single mom, me and my little brother. And I think from a very young age, I knew right away that I needed to be more than just a child, that I needed to be part of, there was like, my mom, so there was no more man of the house, no more dad or whatever, right? So and my brother's 7 years younger than me, so there's a bigger gap. And so there was a part of like, I am doing for this unit. And I think that I'm doing for this little family unit, like latchkey kid, home after school, watching my little brother clean the house before my mom got home, not because she asked me to, but because I know that would make her life, then our lives better, because we would all be able to be present and be with each other. So like, for sure, there was like a serving, but never from a place of I have to. It was intrinsically part of me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think let's pretend that was given to me as a way of being. And then I was landed into the family where you're going to need to use that. So perfect. You were given the gift you needed to have in the family where dad left, and not dad didn't exactly leave, but mom had to raise you on your own. Like I suddenly had a role to fill, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Those are exactly the words that came to me. You were stepping into a big role
Yeah.
as a pretty, how old were you?
So my parents separated, I think, when I was 7 years old. And my brother was very just born.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, a little tiny baby, me and my mom.
So you were 7 and you felt, and did you feel it at the time? Like, I know you probably couldn't have articulated it that way, but did you feel like you were being asked to or called to something? Uh-huh.
I can tell you in a moment of like trauma-ish, I guess, that I probably figured out. So in like 2nd or 3rd grade, I got in trouble in school for talking too much, big surprise. And the principal or the teacher or whatever, like called like, we're having a lot of disruptions from Brian, right? They told me they were going to call my mom. Let me just check. They told me they were going to call my mom to talk to my mom because I'm interrupting so much. And I had a full-on panic attack in my classroom, crying, begging them not to tell my mom. Well, of course, the teacher's like, this child's being beaten at home, which was not happening at all. But the reason why I was bursting into tears and crying is because I knew that my family unit was under stress. Right.
Wow.
And I didn't want to add to that stress by being a bad kid. And so I think that may have been part of I already knew it at that point, right? When I was even younger than 7, because it wasn't like they fought on the day I turned 7 and then they got separated the next day, right? There'd been time before that where there was, energy in the home. And so I think I already knew, like, I can, if I'm really good, or I can help whatever's going on at home. If there's a way for me to affect what's going on at home somehow, whatever that is, have a clean room or be good or get good grades. So did I answer that question?
Yeah. So I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
So was there anything that internally or externally, was there anything you called on or that helped you step into that role? Like I know that I lost a parent when I was quite young, and it feels kind of scary. And was there anything that helped you to deal with that? Gave you comfort, gave you strength?
Okay, I'm geeking out again, but I would say, like, this isn't the right word, but like performative, or like making people laugh. And I remember in 3rd grade, I had to wear like a little box on the front of me with strings around my, like kind of at a circus. And like, it was like our 3rd grade, like show or recital or whatever it was. And I was like, words for sale. Like, I was like, I had to have the star. I really loved having this role of being the one who like had more to carry to set it up and to like host the evening. And I think I leaned into some kind of showmanship, which could show up in different ways. Could show up in a small group where, like, if the teacher separated us into groups, and like I would become the leader of the group, or it could be that the house was really clean, or I like organized the house, or like it wasn't always just expressive. I would say it also came to like objects at times. Like, let me arrange the house so it looks prettier. Let me clean the house so that it feels like something. I used to say that like my mission was to be like a host. Like, I really love hosting, and I feel like that was what I tapped into as a 7-year-old, right? Like, what does hosting mean to a 7-year-old? But like that piece of it. And you made me just think of something so good. I just wish the earth would swallow you right now. Is that I just lost it. It'll come back. But something around hosting just came up for me, but it'll come back. Okay. It'll come back.
Yeah. So was there ever, did you have a spiritual side as a kid, religious, or when did even the idea of God or spirituality come into your life? And again, if I'm getting too personal, there's anything you don't want to answer,
I'll just hang up this podcast.
Okay.
So there was my family was not a religious family. I'd gone to church like 4 times in my life, and 3 of them were weddings as a child, probably. And I'd gone to church with like friends once in a while, and church was never a thing. Church is not a thing for me right now. Like, ministry and spirituality is, but not a church, right? So it wasn't really something that I had around me, had an understanding of. I think that I had an understanding of like my mother was by herself, and my grandmother wasn't by herself. She was married to my grandfather, but he wasn't really around. And I had this kind of connection to like, I don't know if I can name it, but there was a connection to strength of doing something for something beside yourself. Because my mother was, of course, providing for us. There was a little bit of, I don't know if I would call it sacrifice, but probably sacrifice in being a woman who was certainly could meet another man and get married again if she wanted to, if that's what she wanted for her life, but like was also saddled with two children, or maybe she saw it as an opportunity. I think it would depend on the day, probably. But I think there was something around that I was privy to, that I saw, that I witnessed as a way of being that wasn't just for yourself.
So I was going to ask you about that. So is that kind of, what I was going to ask you, another question was, did you ever have doubts? Did you ever have fears like you were being called to do something that felt like too much, or you were scared?
No,
No. So
no.
so you didn't experience that way, but you kind of got strength from doing something that, like you said, for others. So it
Yes.
took you
And
beyond
oh, wait,
yourself.
and let's got attention. Hello, if you clean the house and your mom comes, she goes, "Oh my gosh, it looks so nice here. Oh, did you start to make dinner?" Like I would do the same thing when I would go visit my dad with my stepmother's house. "Oh my gosh, it looks so nice." Like there was attention that came from this. Let's be wise that I noticed the attention that I would get. And
Yeah.
but I had joy while I was doing it, not just when I got the attention. That was the difference, I think. It wasn't only when someone said good job.
Mm-hmm.
It was more while I was doing it, I was enjoying, I was thinking about, like, it was almost out of body, but it was like, I can just think of myself, like, I'm just thinking of myself dusting my stepmother's like dining room at one point, like when I'm like 12 years old. What 12-year-old does this, by the way? Right. And so I am just thinking about like how beautiful it's going to look and how good she's going to feel about it. And like, I'm just like, and I'm just having a good time, how like, and I'm going to appreciate it. Right. I would say that my partner probably is like, the house does not have to look like a museum all the time. Like that would be a complaint probably around this. Cause it's not about the clean house. It's the experience of the clean house.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And clean isn't even the right word. I don't think the right, like, it's like a way of feeling inside. Like I have this might help a little. I don't know if it will at all, but at night I like to turn on certain lights in the house because it feels like the house is homey and lived in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner and I will be like, okay, it's time for bed. He's like, okay, time to turn off the 16 lights you turn on. Like, it's like very like, cause I am like, yes, but that makes me feel really good in the house. So there's something around this creation of an atmosphere that relates to it for me. Oh, I found the thing I forgot. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. So
Yes.
I'm giving you a lot here, you guys, I hope. When I was a child and I was with my mother's number one want in the world was to have a home. And we were not quite gypsies, but we were a little bit gypsies of not necessarily having a place to live, and we moved around a lot. And I think that me dusting at my stepmother's sure had a lot to do with making a home, making a safe place, making a place where we can be comfortable, making a place where it felt like it wasn't going to be the rug pulled out from underneath you. And there was a time when, like, I remember I went to a different school every year, like third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade or something like that. There was a different school every year for a minute. So that is in there too, I think.
Great. So great. No, this is so good. Like everything you're saying is
it? I hope the listeners
relates to each other.
Like me, I feel like very vulnerable over here.
No, I think people are probably relating to a lot of what you're saying. So was there a point at which you kind of like officially like started thinking about God or about things in more spiritual terms?
I would say that there was a time when I could no longer rely on my own way of thinking to get me out of heartbreak, hurt, or disappointment. Right. So suddenly I was no longer capable of doing it on my own. I'd certainly been to therapists. I just suddenly couldn't. And I think I experienced it. I think that heartbreak is where I started to seek out spiritual advice and help. And I'm a bad breaker upper. What I mean by that is not like I'm going to treat someone badly and break up. I'm never break up with anyone again. But when it was time that was happening, and I would be at the end of a relationship, I had a really hard time separating, almost always. And so those separations started to I knew that there was something in that separation that I needed to learn. And that's where spirituality came from for me, I think. And I think is the belief, um, that a relationship doesn't end just because it's changed forms, right? Or that the love doesn't end because a relationship has changed forms. And that was a concept too big for me to get with logic. And so I had to believe in something else to connect the dots to. This person still exists. They're not dead to me, and I still care about them, but the form of our relationship has changed. So how do I be with that and feel safe with, we're not in love anymore. This is not that kind of relationship. I think that was really the catalyst for me seeking some other way of being with this, because I knew that was the truth. I knew that there's still love here, but we're allowed to end this. I needed something else to help me. I didn't have enough tools on my own. I think that's how I found God, found spirituality, found something that needed to be outside of myself. I mean, more than namaste at the end of a yoga class. I mean, up till then, that's as good as it got. And once in a while, I felt like, oh, euphoric, cool. Like that wasn't enough.
Yeah. So would you say that it was like being with, you said heartbreak, but like with loss, with separation, that was like the window into the need for the kind of strength that can come from spirituality?
100%. Yeah. And I think it was incremental, right? Spirituality, I think you get it incrementally. Like you hear a concept, it hits through your head, it slowly moves down to your heart, and then so it was a very incremental experience of, I can continue to let spirituality in, right? I had to let it. And part of what A Course in Miracles prides itself on, which is the training obviously that I've been trained in, right, is that it is a practical course, that it is not just think about this and your life is going to be fabulous, right? It's not that. So that it is that when you shift your mind in this way, or you open this kind of thinking, things will change. And so the practicality of spirituality started to really have an effect for me. It's weird that I'm saying this because I don't think I've articulated that in that way before for myself. So
yeah,
you're really good at what you do.
So thank you. So how are you feeling now as you're talking about all of this?
Pretty good. A little seen. A little seen.
Yeah.
A lot seen. It's becoming more comfortable because I've said it once out loud, I think.
Right.
That makes it a little bit easier to, I don't think I've ever gone this far back to look at where these origins came from of this way of being. I've certainly thought about it, but not in this particular of a way to connect the dots.
Yeah. So now, just switching gears a little bit. So the people now, when you think about talking about this more, bringing into your work more, the people that you feel nervous about or maybe concerned how they might receive it or what they might think about, these are the actors that you work with specifically, right?
It's not just actors. So I work with actors and creative people, but it's not particular to like that they're an actor or that they're a photographer, right? It's just you didn't sign up to come listen to Brian's podcast. You didn't sign up for church, right? You didn't sign up for church.
Yeah.
But that's part of who I am. That is part of what I think does attract some of my communities, not the church part. There's no church here, but the spirituality piece of it, the piece that like, this is rooted in your purpose, that you are bigger than yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, so as you were talking, I mean, when I said good, it's because I think it's the themes are so on point. Like you were asked to step into a big role as a young child, right? And what is your work about? Roles, helping others step into their big roles, right? And what did you say you wanted? You said you wanted a sense of home, right?
Yes.
And I think a spiritual path, including the course, which I'm familiar with, is a lot about finding that sense of home within yourself, right? So, for example, with the course, it talks about the ego and the Holy Spirit, or whatever terms you want to give it. And you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of get a new sense of who you are. You realize you have choices, and that what you thought was your whole identity is just one piece of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that everybody who is on a creative path, they need that in some way. It's very vulnerable to be creative, right? You are constantly taking something that's within yourself and putting it out into the world and going, oh my God, what are people going to think? Right? Like that is.
Well, does anyone even care?
Do they care? Maybe they'll think nothing. That's the worst,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so I actually think bringing some of these themes in that you've been talking about here, like why this is meaningful to you, will bring it to life for the people you work with. Now for me, I also identify as being very creative. I do a lot of writing, a lot of different things. And I always visualize it as kind of dancing with the creative spirit. I think the creative spirit, and I've used God, I've used other terms. I think that, one of the things you're providing through this new training, this awareness that you have, is helping people find that sense of home within themselves. And people need that so much when they're immersed in their own creativity. We'll take actors as an example. If you don't have that, you feel so much like you're a product and you're at the mercy of everything outside of yourself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is the first thing you can lose when you devote yourself to some kind of creative work, whether it's performance or visual art or writing, whatever it is. You start to feel so much like you are the work rather than you are you. And then you become the reaction to the work, right? And it's so easy to lose yourself. And so one of the things that's really unique about what is opening up, what you've opened up to bring to your work, is to help people find that sense of home and realize their creative work is also part of that. That some people might use spiritual terms, and might not. I do. It's to me, it's a spiritual process being creative, in the sense that it doesn't come from you. Right.
Yeah.
And to keep that going, to contain that, to be the channel to let all that happen, you need to have that sense of home.
Yeah, that's really well said.
And so I think this is really powerful stuff. And the fact that you are so open, you can share that, you use the term God, but you can also call it, and you can, have a lot of different words, right? But I think that people will be really eager to get that from you. And it's really rich.
Well, part of what you just kind of, I think, opened up for me is some kind of idea around it's almost like I want to get it when I start speaking to someone for the first time, or they're in a class, they're all collected together this is when I particularly find myself become super conscious around it. Like, I don't exactly know everyone who's in this room right here, or maybe they've had some interaction with me, but not a lot. And I don't want them to feel alienated or feel like they can't listen. And kind of what I'm hearing in here is, and I'm going to the to-doing list right now. So you might say, Brian, don't go there yet. So feel free. Right. But there's almost some kind of like, hey, I'm Brian, I'm glad you're here. And my goal is to return you to the confidence and clarity inside of yourself so that you can feel at home while we talk about your creativity. So I'm going to use a lot of words that connect to the way I think about it. So I'm going to use the word God and universe, and I might even use some wild stories from the Bible, from the Old Testament, or Jude. I also use lots of images from Jude. I don't know, what would you say? Would you say Jewish tradition? Yeah, Jewish tradition.
Judaism.
I would say Judaism is what I wanted to say, but I wasn't sure if that was the word to use there. Okay. So Judaism. And so because those are the things that I know how to pull from. Also, we might talk about Wizard of Oz and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yes.
I want you to be here with permission to hear those things so that you can hear them for the stories that they are, and not let them be barriers to you finding a sense of home. That's kind of what I'm wanting to be able to say. But do I need to do all that? Like, that's the second voice. The second voice goes, why are you saying all this? You don't need to do all this, Brian, because they're going to do that. Like, you're being weird. Like, that will come up right away. And like, now you just made things weird that weren't weird before. Like, does that make sense? I don't know if that's exactly the track we're on right now, but I want to that's what goes on inside my brain.
Well, and you can speak, but I think that it only is weird if there's a part of you that feels like you're coming from apologizing because you feel weird about it. Whereas if the energy is more like actually encouraging the people you work with to explore this for themselves, like, do they resonate with the word God? Is there another word? What does it mean to them? And what stories do they resonate with? Like for you, the word God is great, and stories from the Bible are great, and so are stories from, like you said, the Wizard of Oz, or right, right.
Right.
But to help them, you know, suggest to them that they find their own stories and
Right.
their own
Right.
words,
Right.
right?
And their own way in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Even when, also, I'll just tell you, like, even when you say the word Bible, I like kind of want to throw up in my mouth a little bit because, like, because what you hear, right? And this is, the Bible needs better PR, I think. But like what you can hear is like, I am what is it called? Evangelical, some kind of, super Christian, whatever, which is not what I resonate with at all, but it is a way in because you understand the story. Like we can just use the story because, you've also seen like The Departed by Martin Scorsese. We can use that as a story. Like it's just another way in that is a common language, and almost like I'm speaking English. So I'm going to use this because most of you know the story of Christmas or whatever. So sometimes that's where it makes me, I have that reaction. Like you just said, like, what are the stories? You can find your own stories that resonate for you. Here's the ones that I know how to use. Right.
Well, I think also here's where you can use your humor too. I remember the very first time we met you was at a retreat, and you told a short story from, I think it was about Christmas or something, but anyway, from the Bible, and you were very funny. It was short and it was hilarious, and we laughed.
Great. Good.
And I mean, I once had a spiritual teacher who he said something about God, and then he goes, "But you can use the name Carmichael if you like." And then the guy went right on, and it was hilarious, right?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, because as you say that, and I remember the story. It was actually about Easter. And as you tell
right,
the
it was
story,
Easter. You're
I
right.
think it was Easter.
Yeah, you're right.
But as you tell that, I think about like I'm making a problem that might not be there. Does that make sense? And I say that like I'm making an obstacle that isn't actually there to the people who are hearing this at times, right? I might be actually making it. Everyone's like, yeah, Brian, okay, come on, tell the story. We're good. Like there could be a little bit of like, maybe I need to give a little bit of safety to the room, but I don't need to overwork this too hard. Like put one seatbelt on, not four, Brian, for everybody.
Well, see, that's exactly, that's the whole thing, right? When you're really clear about your purpose, and you could think about this more, but helping people step into a big role, helping them have a sense of home within that they can grab onto, right? So they can go beyond themselves, right? Helping them to experience their creativity in a bigger way, because it's hard when you feel like it's coming from you, right?
Yeah.
All of those things. When you're really clear about your purpose, then the words won't trip you up so much.
Yeah. I was just going to say the same thing. That's one thing that's great about the bop is it gives that anchor. So like some of those phrases that may be a part of it for you, or like a sense of home, you can grab onto for strength, or experiencing creativity in a bigger way than just you. And so when you have those kinds of that phrase that really is that anchor, the words will come because it's not really about the words. It's stemming from the meaning underneath the words, which is that. And if that's something that you're wanting to help other people create, you'll be able to trust that that's possible and that they can.
Yeah. So I'm almost hearing like, and I'm kind of sports commentating for our audience here for a second, that like the bop also is almost like an editing tool inside of your brain. Like if you know these words and you can say, yeah, you're like, it kind of shuts off that part of you that wants to say this is stupid or no one cares about this, because it's saying like, if you're doing this, then you're doing the right thing, or you're saying the right thing, or you're being the right way, because you're so anchored in this is it. This is it. This is it. It's a little bit like when I don't know if it's like when there's like a dog in the room, you're like, okay, this is a dog. You don't know this dog yet. You're not going to put your hand in front of its mouth right now. It's a dog. You're going to be kind, and you're like, see if the dog is like cool. Like you just kind of know it's a dog, right? So you're going to relate to it like a dog. So if you kind of know this is the way you're going, you're going to continue to relate to yourself in a way just more safely, I guess, is maybe a way to say that.
Yeah, exactly. So, the first thing we do when we work with people, like say in the bop course, you're right, it's all about finding your bop. So the first thing we do is find the bop kind of for your life. It's like the deepest purpose that you feel you're here to express in the world, right? It's an inner meaning. And then we talk about what you love to do, the skills, talents, things you like using. When you can marry those two, like great, right? Okay, but so the bop, ultimately a bop is a bop for your life, right? But then sometimes people will say, they'll come to us and they'll be like trying to figure out something about their business. And then we'll say, well, let's come up with a bop for your business, which is kind of like a mission statement. It's just we approach it a little bit differently. So for you, you might want to come up with a bop just for this piece of what you do, the spiritual piece, And I would say some of the things we talked about, stepping into a bigger role, finding a sense of home, knowing that you're bigger than yourself, all those kind of phrases, play with those and come up with a statement that you feel really good about. This is the purpose behind me opening up this path in my work, this piece in my work.
So of course I'm super curious about this, and you can say, Brian, you're jumping the gun here, but is there can you give me an example of someone else's bop? Is that uncomfortable to do? Or like, can I hear one? I'd love to hear, like, what does it sound like? Or just even the music of one, or like, just like,
sure.
So I can grasp onto the idea of it. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me find a good one I'm thinking of. You
Okay.
go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. I mean, and they sound very different for different people.
Right.
Often sometimes they're super specific, but sometimes not. Sometimes it's something about love or being heard. For me, my overall one is, I'm here to put ideas together in new ways that help people to feel better and live better.
Great. And is it always start in that beautiful way? I'm here to, or does people's come in different shapes and sizes in a way?
They come in different
Yeah,
sizes.
it can be, and I'm here to. It can be more of a philosophical statement of just something you believe. This is one from an actor and stand-up comedian who said, through openness, vulnerability, and emotional honesty, I help others laugh, feel more joy, and have greater acceptance of their own humanity.
Love
Yeah.
it.
And the way that really helped him is, before finding his bop, he was really talented and everything, loved the work he was doing in stand-up comedy and acting, but he was feeling kind of disconnected from it, and just a lot of fears and doubts and some disconnection, and kind of being hard on himself in various ways. And then after coming to this bop, he like had such a sense of the purpose of my comedy is emotional honesty and to uplift people. And when he really like tuned into that's the purpose of it, it allowed him to kind of approach his comedy as like this like humane comedy with this deeper purpose. So it's not even so much about every joke working or this or that. It's really about, am I bringing my bop to my comedy? And when I
could just see him writing down to write his set so much more freely.
Yeah.
Knowing that this is my purpose while I'm writing this. This set is all about this. This is all I'm providing.
Exactly. Another example, I don't remember the full bop, but so we worked with somebody who's a videographer, and she was feeling like her work had become a little bit like it wasn't as deeply fulfilling as she wanted it to be. She was taking jobs, but sort of like, I'm not a technician. There's something more here. And we did bop work, and she realized she's here to pierce reality. And she wants to tell stories that help people see things in a new way, and it really gave her a sense of focus about the kind of job she's going to go for and look for, and the kind she's not.
Well, also, I love what there's another clarity that it gives that I think a lot of creatives face, which is, I'm going to probably take jobs that don't always align exactly, or I can't make the straight line to my purpose with this exact job because it happens to pay the bills and I need to do this once in a while. Like right? Yeah. And because let's all be real, right? Right. And so what I find happens is then you can say, oh, I'm choosing to do this. I know it's not my number one thing. And therefore I can quit trying to bring my template of my number one thing to my waiting tables job, because that is what I do in my acting. However, the other part about it is, I also believe you can make whatever your thing you're doing into your ministry. So you can make your waiting tables job into, I'm really providing an experience for someone, or whatever your thing is, but just to have the distinction of, I'm gonna have to do a little bit more work to get behind what my bop is when I'm waiting tables, rather than when I'm, acting. Like that's easy for me when I'm acting. Here, I need to figure, I've got a little more work to do. Does that connect to the work you do?
Totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, for some people's bops, and this is where it's, not tricky, but hard to define, because for some people, a bop directly relates to their work and anybody would get it. Like, say your work is something around, I say your bop is something around, women accepting their body image or something like that, because and then the work you do is as a therapist helping people with that issue, right? So that happens where you're like, oh yeah, but then, like, for example, I was a web designer at one time, and at that time, the reason it was meaningful to me was it was about helping people find their voice and be seen and heard in the world. Now, you wouldn't have put that together going, well, he's a web designer, right? But I tried to bring that meaning to it as much as I could.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like when I think about like the accountant, who you kind of think, well, that's just numbers and adding things up, but actually sees that as part of their ministry to making possible whatever they're attached to, right? This makes possible this, or this is why this is I'm serving this audience because of whatever, or these people. And so, and I think when you think of more drier, let's say drier jobs, you can kind of like, how does that connect? But what you just said kind of makes it clearer for us that there is a way to connect it.
One thing that's really fun for people to do, before they really get into bop work and all that, but it can start to like tease some really interesting things out, is to think about like a job you really wouldn't like. Like if somebody said, what would be the worst job, or just a job you'd like, and then, think about that. And then what would you do to make that job tolerable or even enjoyable for yourself? And it's really interesting. So I did that. And what came to me, this was years ago, was owning a gas station. I don't know why. It was just like, I mean, there are other jobs. It's not that it's terrible. It's just, I was like, I have no interest, right?
Yeah.
It just does not interest me. But then I started writing about, so what would I do? If I woke up and I owned a gas station, what would I do to make it meaningful and even fun to me? And all this stuff came to me about like helping give back to the community, creating sport teams for the kids, supporting the schools, helping local theater. Like there was all this different stuff. And by the end, I thought that'd be pretty cool to be able to do that. But more importantly, I looked at, there were like 12 different things within that. I thought, I really value that. I care about that. I want to find some way to do that in my life, So that's interesting. Yeah.
That's cool. I think that sometimes I'll talk to someone who, I talk about networking a lot with the creative people that I work with, especially with actors. And I think about, okay, so when you're networking, you're going to probably be the worst human being you've ever been in your life. And you hate everyone there, and you hate yourself, and no one, and like, you're super transactional, and your brain is just not on connecting. You're like, I'm being sized up and I'm sizing them up. And you're just so distanced from yourself, separate from yourself. So I always say, and like, this reminds me of this, because like, so think of that experience. And now what 3 qualities do you wish you had? Right? Like these, and so what I think that sometimes when we can imagine ourselves in the crappy circumstances, we find within ourselves that thing which we need, even in the, like, networking is not a life or death situation. Let's just be clear, right? But we can kind of tap into, when we put ourselves in extremes, we can find what is it we wish we always had, right? Mm-hmm. That really resonates for me, the way you described that. Yeah. Totally. So if I'm going to take a little bit of what we did today with my bop work, and I'm going to make a commitment to you and to everyone listening, I guess, oh God, literally, oh God. I think I would like to make you guys help me if we do a good job here. Okay, I'm going to try to come up with a kind of like a little bit of an assignment for this for myself. And I know not too, but like how I'm going to mess with this within myself is I want to find a way for me to, you tell me if this is wrong, but I'm almost wanting to have a pat memorized speech, something that is like my permission slip to fly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's a speech that I say out loud, or I say to myself before I go in the room, or it is a bop thing. That's kind of what I think I want. I want it to be, I sometimes have this prayer that I say, that I stole from Brené Brown, that is like, dear universe, dear God, allow me to educate and delight in your will and in your way as I go into this class. It's like the teacher's prayer or something like that. And I just feel like that really often will free me up, because I'm there to serve, or there to be the faucet, not the water. And I think that there's something that could, what do you think? Is this a horrible idea? I feel nervous. That means maybe it's a good idea.
I love it.
I love it.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea. Do you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I would first do, like we said earlier, like approach it like in terms of meaning, like if this, almost like if whatever word you use for this piece of what you're bringing to your spirituality or ministry, whatever word it is, if it were speaking to you like a character, what would it tell you it wants to do. Like, how does it want to serve? What does it want to bring to people? You know,
All right.
work with that, and see if you come up with something like a statement. It's like a bop, right? Like, this is what that piece is about. And then it sounds like maybe turning that into a prayer, like as you're about to step out onto stage or into the room, like, may I use this too,
Yes.
right? And then there might be another piece around also using that to create something that you share with the public. And maybe they're all very similar, or maybe they're quite different, but
I
yeah.
love this. I love this. And I just want to connect to our listen. So I'm making the commitment that I'm going to do that, first of all. So that will happen. As scary and exciting, it's also super exciting to think about this, like that there's a character of spirituality who like is telling me what it needs to, what it wants to do, what, right? And the other is I want to connect the dots for the audience here. If you're an actor or creative person, I think so often we, like you said earlier, we reduce ourselves to the work we put into the world. And when you go into an audition room, what are you bringing in the room that is beyond the work? What is the gift you're giving those people? It isn't just your performance. It's the, what is the scent in the room? Like that's, or what is the feeling in the room that you're bringing each time that is always there, that can be relied upon because it's been there since the day you were born, right? So that I think is what you're really giving us, that awareness. Because what I always find is when you're focused on that, like the presentation, the acting, the whatever is next, doesn't matter. Like you're gonna do awesome because you are so not worried about that. You are so in your humanhood, right? So I just appreciate that so much. This is such a nerve-wracking, wonderful gift for me today. I was so nerve-wracked and excited. So I really stay tuned to see how I start to do this. I'll get that homework done. Now, I want everyone who's listening to be able to do this kind of work with you and to take this further. And I always find that when we do this work on our own, all of our little gremlins can come up and try to create safety or engineer small risk. And the questions that you know how to ask or the way that you respond are so create safety in a way where it is not, I can go beyond my tiny risk, right? I'm willing to go a little bit further. And that's what I think, that's why I'm so excited for you to connect with more of this audience. So how can people find you and stay in touch with you?
Yes, yes. Well, our website is boldlyoriginal.com.
I mean, how easy is that? It's the best rep.
Yes.
Good job, you guys. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can find out about us and the BOP work and our BOP course there. And yeah, and also we can tell your listeners about, there's one other place to go, sixpowerprompts.com.
Okay,
I just want to tell you about that because, as you've seen, a big part of this process is asking deep reflective questions. And these questions can really pull out wisdom that's right underneath the surface. And so that on sixpowerprompts.com, there's you can get these 6 power prompts to help uncover your deeper purpose. And there's 6 really powerful questions that can kind of get you started in the process of extracting that
Oh, I
wisdom right
love that.
underneath the
I love
surface.
that. And you lead us, does it help us kind of, the prompts are there to set us up to ask ourselves these tough.
Yes, yes. You can ask yourself these questions or do it with a friend and start the process of this. Yeah.
I love that so much. Well, I want to just thank you guys so much for being here with me today. It means so much to put my heart on a table in front of you, and to know that you're going to help me so beautifully, and to help this audience that is listening to see a way to see themselves differently, or to see themselves more strongly, and to be reinforced in their purpose beyond just day to day, right? Like we're so much more than that. So I really appreciated you having this conversation with me. And I love you guys so much. So this is like a joy. So is there anything you want to leave the audience with today? Anything else you need to say to make sure that they hear? I'm putting you on the spot right now.
Well, first I want to say thank you. This is such a joy being here with you, and thank you for being so real and so vulnerable. And as far as the audience, I want to say that it does feel vulnerable, and sometimes you can have something which we've talked about a little bit before, bop backlash, and which is when you start to get really near to what is really meaningful to you. Fear can come up, right? So when we do the whole process, we're there with you and we hold you through it. And, when you start to explore this stuff on your own, though, just expect that for every wonderful aha moment that you may have, you may later also have some fear or vulnerability backlash. And that doesn't mean anything's wrong. Just hold it gently and, have compassion for yourself.
Yeah, growing pains. I'm hearing you say, Lily, you're gonna have some of the growing pains as you
Exactly.
get bigger. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Thank you both so much. This is such a joy. Thank you for being here. And I have to have you back. Obviously, I have to have you back when I uncover what this is and see how it works. See if it doesn't. See how good I'm doing. I want a good grade in this class for myself as well.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.